Risk management in leadership is the proactive identification, assessment, and mitigation of threats to an organization's objectives. Effective leaders utilize four core techniques: avoidance by eliminating the risk, mitigation or reducing its impact, transference by outsourcing to third parties, and acceptance through absorbing unavoidable risks. Risk management is the systematic process of identifying, analyzing, and mitigating uncertainties that could negatively impact an organization. It involves evaluating potential losses, such as financial, operational, or strategic risks, and implementing strategies to minimize their impact, ensuring that, while risks are taken for profit, they remain within acceptable levels. Before we get into risk management, first we must understand the risks. Recognizing workplace risks is vital because it protects organizational health, prevents financial losses, and ensures legal compliance. Knowing these dangers helps teams prevent incidents before they occur. The common risk types typically seen in the workplace include strategic risk. It is the possibility that an organization's business decisions or long-term strategies fail, threatening its core objectives, competitive edge, or survival. Unlike daily operational or financial risks, strategic risks stem from high-level choices or major external disruptions that fundamentally alter the business landscape. Examples include shifts in consumer demand, disruptive new technologies, failed mergers, or aggressive new competitors. Operational risk. It is the potential for financial loss resulting from inadequate or failed internal processes, people, and systems, or from external events. It is the fundamental risk of doing business and encompasses everything from human errors and technology crashes to fraud and natural disasters. Examples can be supply chain disruptions, equipment breakdowns, human error, or IT system crashes. Financial risk. It is the probability of losing money or failing to meet financial obligations. It applies to both individuals and businesses and represents the inherent uncertainty that your actual financial outcomes will differ from your expectation. Examples include unpaid customer invoices, market volatility, liquidity shortages, or changes in interest rates. Compliance and legal risk. Legal risk and compliance form the backbone of corporate governance. While often used interchangeably, they serve distinct purposes. Compliance risk focuses on adhering to current rules and regulations, whereas legal risk involves broader exposure to litigation, contractual disputes, and adverse judgments. Examples are things such as regulatory penalties, contract disputes, labor law violations, or data privacy noncompliance. Security and fraud risk. These refer to the exposure of individuals and organizations to financial loss, operational disruption, and reputational damage from deceptive actions. Managing these risks involves proactive identification, assessment, and mitigation of threats like account takeovers, new account fraud, and phishing. Examples include cyber attacks, data breaches, intellectual property theft, or embezzlement. And reputational risk. This is the potential for negative public perception to damage a company's brand, ultimately eroding stakeholder trust and impacting financial performance. Because up to 80% of a company's market value is tied to intangible assets like brand equity, effectively managing this risk is critical to long-term survival. Examples include negative public relations crises, poor product quality, or unethical business practices. A core risk mitigation framework is a structured approach used by organizations to identify, assess, and reduce the likelihood or impact of potential threats. It generally consists of 5 essential components: risk identification, risk assessment, risk mitigation, continuous monitoring, and transparent reporting. To successfully navigate and manage organizational threats, a standard risk mitigation framework relies on these core pillars. 1. Risk identification. The process of detecting and documenting potential threats, hazards, and vulnerabilities before they impact the organization. This involves brainstorming, historical data analysis, and market screening. 2. Risk assessment and analysis. Evaluating the identified risks by determining their likelihood of occurrence and potential impact. Risks are typically mapped using a risk matrix to prioritize which threats require immediate attention. 3. Risk mitigation. Developing and executing strategic plans to minimize, eliminate, or accept the risk. Organizations may choose to avoid, reduce, transfer, for example, through insurance, or accept a specific risk. 4. Risk monitoring and reviewing. Continuously tracking the risk environment to ensure mitigation strategies are working effectively. As internal or external business environments change, the risk landscape must be actively reevaluated. 5. Communication and reporting. Distributing transparent risk metrics and updates to stakeholders via dashboards and reports. Clear communication ensures organizational alignment and accountability. And 6. Governance and culture. Establishing policies, procedures, and oversight mechanisms. A strong risk culture ensures that risk awareness is embedded into an organization's daily operations and strategic objectives. Risk identification is the foundational step in risk management. It is the systematic process of spotting, documenting, and cataloging potential threats or opportunities that could impact an organization's objectives, projects, or operations. Its primary goal is early detection to enable targeted preventive measures. Common tools and techniques used for risk identification include brainstorming. Gathering stakeholders to freely list potential risks without immediate judgment. SWOT analysis. Identifying internal strengths and weaknesses, alongside external opportunities and threats. And documentation and incident review. Examining past incidents, postmortems, and project plans to spot recurring vulnerabilities. Risk brainstorming techniques are structured methods used to collaboratively identify, categorize, and evaluate potential threats and opportunities before they impact a project or business. These frameworks move beyond unstructured shouting matches to ensure every stakeholder contributes and no blind spots are missed. Methods include 1. Nominal group technique. Participants silently write down potential risks on sticky notes, one idea per note. The facilitator then collects them, reads them aloud, and posts them on a whiteboard. It neutralizes dominant personalities and ensures introverted team members have an equal voice. 2. Affinity diagrams. After generating a massive list of risks, the team works together to sort the ideas into logical, overarching categories, such as financial risks, operational risks, technical challenges, and assigns a name to each group. It instantly transforms a chaotic dump of ideas into an organized structure that is ready for a risk register. 3. Brainwriting or card passing. Split large groups into smaller teams of 3 to 6 people. Give each person a stack of blank cards and ask them to write down a risk and a potential mitigation strategy. After 5 minutes, pass the stack to the next table, where the new group will expand on the idea or add new ones. It scales beautifully for larger organizations and builds deep team buy-in across different departments. 4. Reverse brainstorming. Instead of asking what could go wrong, the team asks how could we intentionally cause this project to fail or ruin this company? It lowers the psychological barrier to sharing, as it's inherently more fun to poke holes in a process. The resulting failure points easily convert into real-world risks. And 5. Category-prompted brainstorming. Use established risk taxonomies to prompt the team. Break your analysis down by specific headings like PESTLE or political, economic, social, technological, legal, environmental, or use a standard risk breakdown structure or RBS. It provides a structured roadmap that actively prevents the team from overlooking entire sectors of potential exposure. A SWOT risk analysis evaluates strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats to identify strategic vulnerabilities and opportunities. It bridges internal capabilities, strengths and weaknesses, with external market conditions, opportunities and threats, to proactively manage risk and inform business decisions. The 4 pillars of SWOT are: strengths. Internal advantages or capabilities, such as strong cash flow, proprietary tech, and team skills. Weaknesses. Internal vulnerabilities or resource gaps, such as lack of experience or high turnover. Opportunities. External conditions to exploit, for example, emerging markets and favorable regulation. And threats. External forces that could cause harm, including economic downturns, new competitors, and supply chain disruptions. You can learn more about conducting a SWOT analysis by clicking the subscribe button and watching the FSTG Strategic Decision Making video. A risk document tracks potential hazards, their severity, and mitigation strategies. An incident review retrospectively analyzes an event when a risk materializes. Documents can include risk registers, mitigation plans, and analysis reports. Incident reviews involve fact-gathering, root cause analysis, and corrective action assessments. Together, they form a closed-loop system where past mistakes inform future preventative controls. Risk assessment and analysis are systematic processes for identifying, evaluating, and prioritizing potential threats to an organization to minimize negative impacts and guide decision-making. Risk assessment is the overarching process of identifying threats and vulnerabilities, while risk analysis, often a component of the assessment, focuses on measuring the likelihood and impact of those risks using qualitative or quantitative methods. The key methodologies and approaches include: qualitative risk analysis relies on experience and subjective judgment to rate risk levels, such as high, medium, or low. Quantitative risk analysis uses numerical data and models, such as Monte Carlo simulations, to calculate specific probabilities and monetary impacts. Risk matrix and/or heat maps are visual tools that map the likelihood of an event against its potential impact to prioritize action. And the FAIR model is a framework for analyzing and quantifying information security and operational risk. A qualitative risk analysis is a project management process that evaluates and prioritizes identified risks based on their probability of occurrence and potential impact. Relying on expert judgment and descriptive scales, such as low, medium, and high, it provides a fast, cost-effective way to determine which threats require immediate attention. The key characteristics are: subjective evaluation. The system utilizes expert experience, stakeholder input, and intuition instead of hard numerical data. Quick and inexpensive. It requires fewer resources and less time to execute compared to quantitative methods. And action-oriented. This system helps teams quickly filter out minor risks and focus on those that could critically derail a project. The qualitative risk analysis process is as follows. First, as previously acknowledged, risks are identified through brainstorming sessions and document reviews to list all potential threats or opportunities that could affect the project. Then a probability and impact assessment is conducted. For each risk, estimate the likelihood of it happening and the severity of its consequences. Risk probability is the likelihood or chance that a specific risk event will occur within a defined time frame. Risk severity measures how bad the consequences would be if a specific threat, hazard, or vulnerability actually occurs. Once this is done, then risk mapping is completed by plotting the assessed risks on a probability and severity matrix to identify the risk level. The intersection of probability and severity provides a prioritization ranking to classify risks as risks between low and high, allowing the team to allocate mitigation resources effectively. For example, if the probability is identified as likely and the severity is critical, then the risk will be classified as high and will be prioritized above risks that may have a lower impact to the organization. Risk mitigation is the proactive process of planning and implementing strategies to minimize the likelihood or impact of adverse events. Instead of attempting to eliminate all threats, it focuses on reducing risk to a tolerable level to ensure business continuity and protect critical objectives. Risk mitigation strategies will be discussed in more detail later in this video. Quantitative risk analysis is a statistical technique that assigns numerical probabilities and financial values to risks. It translates uncertainty into objective, measurable data, such as project delays or dollar losses, to help organizations allocate resources, forecast worst-case scenarios, and determine necessary budget contingencies. Similar to qualitative methods, a quantitative risk analysis assigns a value to probability and impact. Probability is the statistical likelihood of a risk event actually occurring, typically expressed as a percentage or decimal. The impact is a measurable consequence, usually quantified in time or monetary loss. The result is a core calculation used to weigh the average outcome of uncertain scenarios. The equation for risk is the result of the probability times the impact. Here is an example. A company has a critical failure rate of 20% with an expected loss of $50,000 in lost sales, emergency repair costs, and downtime penalties. The risk then becomes 0.2 times $50,000, equaling $10,000 for the evaluated period. A risk heat map is a visual risk management tool that evaluates and displays potential business risks using a color-coded matrix. A risk heat map generally functions as a 2D grid that measures likelihood and impact variables. The intersecting points on the grid are color-coded using stoplight colors to communicate severity at a glance. They typically are red for extreme or high risk. These require immediate attention, strict mitigation strategies, and executive oversight. Yellow for medium or moderate risk. These require ongoing monitoring and contingency plans. And green for low risk. These are generally accepted or require minimal active management. Risk heat maps translate dense, complex data sets into actionable takeaways. Their primary benefits include visual prioritization. Helps leaders focus resources and budget on the most catastrophic threats. Clear communication. Creates a common, easy-to-understand visual language across departments and stakeholders. And strategic planning. Aids in shaping an organization's overall risk appetite and long-term business resilience. The Factor Analysis of Information Risk, or FAIR, framework is the premier, internationally recognized standard for quantifying operational risk. It provides a consistent, transparent, and objective methodology for measuring risk in financial terms, like probable dollar loss, rather than relying on subjective high, medium, and low ratings. At its core, the FAIR model calculates risk by breaking it down into two primary components, loss event frequency, or LEF, and loss magnitude, or LM. FAIR evaluates risk using a probabilistic approach rather than trying to predict exact events. It decomposes risks into a highly structured taxonomy. Loss event frequency is how often a threat successfully breaches an asset and causes a loss. This is influenced by contact frequency, how often a threat agent interacts with an asset, and probability of action, whether the threat agent actually takes action. Loss magnitude is the financial size of the loss if a breach occurs. This is subdivided into primary loss, the direct costs like asset damage, response, or replacement, and secondary loss, the indirect costs like legal fines, lost revenue, or reputation damage. Here is why organizations use the Factor Analysis of Information Risk System. Cost-benefit analysis. By determining the exact financial value of reducing risk, security teams can clearly justify the ROI of proposed cybersecurity purchases to the C-suite and board. Defensible prioritization. It prevents over-indexing on low-impact risks by providing a data-driven method to rank risks by their probable financial impact. And standardization. It eliminates ambiguity in risk discussions by providing a universal language for risk across IT, finance, and executive leaders. Risk monitoring and review is the continuous process of tracking identified risks, measuring the effectiveness of mitigation strategies, and identifying emerging threats. Rather than being a static event, it serves as an ongoing feedback loop that keeps risk registers accurate and adaptable to real-time changes in the environment. The key objectives include: assess effectiveness. Evaluate if current controls and risk treatments are actually working. Identify emerging threats. Continuously scan for emerging vulnerabilities as projects or business operations evolve. And maintain relevance. Ensure risk priorities, likelihood, and impacts are updated to match shifting circumstances. The core mechanisms of a risk monitoring and review system are: regular check-ins. This involves tracking risk status, evaluating mitigation effectiveness, and updating the risk register. Key steps include scheduling consistent cadence meetings, assigning clear risk owners, and documenting any shifts in likelihood or impact. Data and performance tracking uses core metrics like control effectiveness, risk mitigation progress, and incident frequency. Tracking these elements helps teams spot changes early and fix weak security controls before problems grow. And documentation. This process records an organization's ongoing threat assessments, mitigation updates, and control effectiveness. Key components include a centralized risk register, updated mitigation plans, and audit-ready compliance logs. Risk communicating and reporting are processes used to identify, document, and convey hazards so stakeholders can make informed decisions. Effective reporting creates a transparent, data-driven foundation that minimizes compliance failures, mitigates operational threats, and ensures your audience understands exactly what action is required. The core components include a robust risk reporting and communication framework focuses on the following primary elements to ensure clarity and actionable insights. Audience tailoring. Translate technical risk data into language relevant to your stakeholders. Executives need business and financial impacts, while employees require specific, localized safety procedures. Clarity and transparency. State the hazard, the likelihood of occurrence, and the uncertainty involved, without using confusing jargon. Visuals and dashboards. Utilize standardized charts, heat maps, and graphs to make complex data easy to digest at a glance. And actionable mitigation. Always tie your communication to clear, manageable solutions and defined responsibilities. Beyond basic processes, effective risk leaders focus on structural and cultural shifts. Here are some foundational leadership risk strategies. Scenario planning. Facilitate realistic worst-case simulations and develop contingency plans before execution. Near-miss analysis. Treat avoided disasters as critical learning opportunities rather than proof that hazards don't apply to your team. And cross-functional communication. Break down silos. Ensure IT, finance, and operational leaders are aligned to prevent disjointed responses. A risk management plan is only as strong as the team executing it. Building a risk-aware culture is essential for any organization because it improves decision-making, prevents costly disruptions, and builds trust with customers and regulators. When everyone from top leaders to frontline workers thinks about risk every day, the whole company becomes stronger and safer. Here are some methods to fostering a risk-aware culture. Psychological safety. Build a culture of trust where employees can voice concerns and report near misses without fear of reprisal. Ownership. Incentivize positive behaviors and ensure all team members understand their specific roles in risk mitigation. And open lines of communication. Everyone needs to feel safe to share mistakes or worries without fear of retribution. Leaders employ structured cycles to manage enterprise risks. Risk mitigation strategies are structured plans used to lower the chance or size of potential problems. Avoidance. This simply means stop doing the activity that causes the risk. Sometimes, it is best to avoid or eliminate the risk. Organizations can do this by deliberately choosing not to engage in activities that could expose the business to high risk. Reduction. This method uses controls or backups to make the risk smaller or less likely. Risk reduction is about being proactive rather than reactive. It focuses on reducing the likelihood of a threat and minimizing its impact if it does occur. Transference. Here you shift the financial or legal weight to another group, such as an insurance company or a third-party partner. In this way, organizations can reduce financial and regulatory exposure while ensuring that responsibility for specific incidents is clearly defined and acceptable to all parties. Though it does not eliminate the risk, it cushions the impact in case things go wrong. And acceptance. The organization chooses to live with the risk because the cost. Risk acceptance is about acknowledging that some risks are either too minor or too costly to mitigate, or that the possible reward outweighs the risk. This should be a conscious decision with a clear understanding of potential consequences, yet it is important to have a contingency plan in case the risk materializes. Leadership responsibilities in risk management involve setting the strategic risk vision, fostering an open and risk-aware culture, and allocating necessary resources. Leaders must actively integrate risk discussions into everyday business plans and lead by example. We hope you found this training video valuable. Please click the subscribe button to access additional FSTG training videos.